Hi, this is Cecil Hurt from the Tuscaloosa News, here for the preseason look at the Southeastern Conference, a roundtable discussion with two reporters, myself and Christopher Walsh from the Tuscaloosa News, and two outstanding reporter, columnist, University of Florida specialists from the Gainesville Sun, Pat Dooley and Robbie Andrew. And we appreciate everybody's participation and look forward to talking about the SEC, not just the teams we cover, but the entire conference heading into the 2009 football season. Pat Dooley's going to handle the questions, and we're all going to try and give our best response.
This is actually a rectangle table.
Not quite a round table.
I'll make sure we get that cleared up. Yeah, this is going to be a fun year in the SEC, and of course the league has won 3 in a row. We'll get to that point, whether they'll win 4 in a row or not. But let's start out by talking about the teams that might be surprising teams this year, the sleeper teams, so to speak. Last year, Ole Miss was probably the sleeper team. And, well, you guys start out. Who are your sleeper teams?
Start with Chris.
I think the team that a lot of people are really calling the sleeper surprise is Arkansas. So everyone thinks Petrino's offense is going to be a lot better this year. I can't argue with that. I think Arkansas is definitely going to be a much, much better program. You may not see it in a lot more wins and losses, but the play, I think, is going to be much better.
Cecil?
I talked to Steve Spurrier in Destin, and he thinks that you get a sense, and I'll be interested in what he has to say tomorrow, but in Destin, you got a sense that he thought South Carolina was going to be better. They're a team that's been really close. I think 11 of their 21 SEC losses since he's been there have been 7 points or less. And he feels like they're better defensively. I don't know. He doesn't know what's going to happen with Garcia.
Yeah.
That's the big question.
Nobody knows that.
Nobody knows. But it's with the exception of Florida and Ole Miss, it's a wild card year for everybody at quarterback. Whether you're talking about Georgia, Alabama, even LSU. Although Jefferson had some success in the Peach Bowl, so Garcia certainly has as much or more experience than any of those guys. Again, other than Tebow and Snead, and I just got the sense that Coach Spurrier felt like that South Carolina was going to make some noise this year.
Robbie, I like Arkansas too in terms of personnel, and I agree with you on the second year for a coach, but that schedule is brutal. And they have Georgia at home, but then their road games are all very difficult games. I don't know that they're going to be able to make as big an impact. The team I'm going to pick as my sleeper is Vanderbilt. 17 starters back. I like their talent. I mean, they're a bowl team from last year, but everybody's totally overlooking them. Well, for one reason, it's a tough division, obviously, but I'm going to take Vanderbilt as my sleeper team.
Okay, that's a good sleeper.
Which I think makes the 94th consecutive year somebody's taken Vandy as their sleeper team.
Sometime they will be. Maybe you called it right this time.
Our next topic is the hype that's surrounding two of the programs here in the SEC, and that would be Florida and Ole Miss. Florida, of course, defending national champs. Ole Miss coming off a 9-4 season, won their last 6. A lot of people are excited about that. Robbie, who's going to handle the hype better in the preseason
I think Florida will, because they're a veteran team. They've been in this situation 2 years ago. They found out what happens when you get caught up in expectations, don't have the talent. They have the talent to do it this year, and I think Ole Miss, as bad as they were before Nutt got there, to turn it around like they did. Like he said today, they're getting patted on the back everywhere they go. And, I just have a feeling, even though their schedule is favorable at home, I just have a feeling they're not going to handle it the way that Florida does. I think Florida's pretty focused on knowing how to handle this kind of situation.
Cecil?
Well, I think for Ole Miss, it's a multi-part equation. And we're talking about a team that absolutely beat Florida, looked great, beating Texas Tech, lost to Vanderbilt, lost to South Carolina last year. And I think they're better than those teams, but are they going to have that kind of bump in the road again this year? Are they going to play Vanderbilt, who always seems to give them a hard time? Are they going to play Arkansas? Are they going to get beat somewhere that you don't expect them to get beat? I think they can line up. I think in their big games this year, Alabama and Oxford, LSU and Oxford, they'll be pretty competitive. They'll have a chance to beat anybody. But as far as winning the West, putting together that 7-1 season that gets you to Atlanta, I think remains to be seen if they can be consistent enough week in and week out. They really, for some reason, the hype around them reminds me of the hype around Georgia last year.
I think
it really does.
They've got a quarterback. They looked great in their bowl game against a spread team, whether Hawaii or Texas
They beat
Tech.
Florida.
So I think they've got good players. I think that they've got a chance, but they lose Michael Orr, they lose Jerry on the defensive line, and they just haven't shown that they can be consistent. And that's just regular season, and we're talking about yet another set of issues in the postseason if they go to Atlanta where they've never been to the championship game, and that's a tough thing to do.
Yeah, I agree with Cecil, and in addition to losing a couple of key players and never having been there, no one's talking about LSU at all. And
I agree.
I think
They're
LSU,
under the radar somehow.
LSU is just going to be dying to get a shot at Ole Miss, and I think that's going to be the definitive game.
Yeah, I think, the thing about Ole Miss is the hype that's surrounding them reminds me of Georgia, but the schedule is very easy. I mean, they've got it set up pretty good. I think, and as Robbie mentioned, Florida, you're talking about two senior leaders in Spikes and Tebow, although Spikes, for some reason, didn't show up at SEC
Shy
media days.
Spikes all of a sudden, huh?
Yeah, well, he wasn't shy when he wore that pink suit, was he? But,
Isn't it funny, though, after 4 years, and we're about to play, but after 4 years, I don't feel like I have, and maybe you guys feel differently, but 4 years and a BCS championship, and I still don't feel like I've got a good grip on whether Les Miles is really, is it Les Miles, or do they just have enough players that they're doing it in spite of Les Miles? And that's not fair. I'm usually, I am not Urban Meyer 1-1 with Ron Zook's players.
Right.
Yeah. I don't believe in that kind of stuff, but I still don't have a real grip on whether it's the situation Les Miles is in or whether it's Les Miles.
Well, I wrote a column when they were getting ready to play Florida, and they were 5-0, coming off a national championship, and the headline was "Genius or Goofball." Yeah. And I pretty much
yes.
I don't know.
Well, and I pretty much wrote that he's done a wonderful job, and then they lost 5 of the last 7. So I put the jinx on him, I guess.
Yeah, the answer to that is yes, I think.
Yeah, I think it is. Our next topic is kind of along the lines of who's going to challenge Florida in the SEC. First of all, do you think anybody, Robbie, start with you, can challenge Florida in the East?
Well, like we talked about Georgia, I think they've got the athletes to do it if they get quarterback play that Rick likes. But Tennessee doesn't match up. I think Florida's going to get to Atlanta unless something weird happens. Tebow gets hurt or something. I just don't see another team in the East challenging Florida to get there.
And Cecil, who in the West do you think would you like to see Florida play?
Well,
you want to go, so you want to be
I'd
on
certainly
there.
like to be there and be working that weekend. Not covering basketball quite that quickly. That was a great game last year too, and it would be great to see how they've developed and how they play again. A Florida-Ole Miss matchup would be intriguing after what happened last year, and there would be a lot of excitement around Ole Miss making it for the first time. It's hard to say Florida. First of all, we'll see Florida play LSU.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it's tough to say that, but any of them, I think, as long as there are national championship ramifications, which I think there will be. I'm not going to say that the BCS champion's coming from the SEC until the last question, which is the last question. But I'll say this: if it's Florida and Alabama, or Florida and Ole Miss, or Florida and LSU, I hope it's as good a game as it was last year.
Chris?
Well, from a storyline perspective, I'd love to see it be Mississippi State. Now, having
be
said
good.
that,
Dan Mullen would like that too.
I would not go to Vegas and bet on that, though.
me neither. But I think if Alabama's defense doesn't have a lot of injuries, I think we could very well see a rematch. I think that'd be a great last SEC game for Tim Tebow.
And I think that the three teams, Alabama, Florida, LSU, athletically, they're all on the same level and above everybody else. So I think any of those matchups here would be great.
I think we might really be potentially about where we were in 92, 93, 94, 95, 96.
Yeah, it could be.
It's
almost
looking like
a
that,
perennial.
I think you got the two best coaches, and they're good recruiters, obviously.
Yeah, they both loaded up on talent. So.
I picked LSU to win the West, and it's just a hunch, just what you were saying. I think they're being overlooked, and obviously a loss to Florida wouldn't kill them. If Florida does play Ole Miss in the championship game and loses, Tebow's speech won't get quite the same publicity. I don't think I'm going to work hard to play in the Outback Bowl.
If LSU gets there, they'll have earned it because they do play.
Yeah.
They do play Florida, which the other two don't in the regular season, and they're at Alabama and at Ole Miss.
Yeah, they've got the toughest road to get there, no question.
They'll have earned it.